All right, y'all. We were talking about the build up to things, and as much as I'm pumped for death metal, sequel to metal, right? Is it? There's a lot that happened between metal and death metal that I think a lot of people weren't quite aware of. And they do a really good job, I think, in the first one of just kind of running through some exposition. But what I wanted to do was take an opportunity, since I just wrapped up my reread of all of these books I'm about to mention, and basically give you a guide. If you're getting into death metal and you haven't necessarily checked out everything that came before, I just maybe thought to do a little guide could be beneficial. So here we go. What do you need to read, and what is the journey to Dark Knight's death metal? Well, it starts with metal. Dark Knight's metal. In this book, which was a culmination of Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Batman run, in a way, it introduced the concept of the Dark Multiverse. Now, the Dark Multiverse was the home of all these nightmarish versions of different characters, including Batman, and that's where we got the Batman Who Laughs. And as a result of the heroes winning at the end of this book, they broke the source wall. And now after they break the source wall, the next book would be Justice League No Justice. We knew that Scott Snyder was going to be taking over Justice League. He was going to be helped out in his direction with Joshua Williamson and especially James Tynion IV. It started here. This was a 4-issue series that came out weekly. And so what it does is it deals with the immediate ramifications of breaking the source wall. Now, the source wall is the material boundary of the multiverse. It's a physical thing. We've seen it many times. And if people that have dared to discover what's beyond the source wall usually become a part of the source wall. So that's what happens in here. And it's about the Omega Titans and all this kind of stuff. But this is just what follows immediately afterwards. And what happens to Luthor in this book sets the tone for where Justice League is going. And then we go into Justice League. So in Justice League, Scott Snyder's run, to me, is absolutely fantastic. I freaking love it. I love it so much. So what happens is the source wall is broken and something called the totality comes out. This is going to be the essence of Perpetua. This is a character who's very important in death metal. Lex finds out that there are 7 dark forces in the DC universe. In the first book, he unlocks, with the help of his Legion of Doom, because he's brought together the classic Legion of Doom really for the first time in comic books. Black Manta, Gorilla Grodd, Joker, Cheetah, Sinestro, Brainiac joins. Luthor really is holding no stops. In that first book, they unlock the first 2 unseen hidden forces. One is the Still Force, which is why Gorilla Grodd has a baby turtle strapped to his belly. And the other one is the Emotional Spectrum. Both of these have opposites on positive energy, basically. And the Emotional Spectrum is the opposite, of course, of the invisible spectrum. Did I say emotional? It's the invisible spectrum, ultraviolet light, all the stuff within. And the Still Force is, of course, the opposite of the emotional force. In the next book, we find out that the Batman Who Laughs has been captured by Lex Luthor. Lex frees him in exchange for information he needs to find the next 2 forces. The next 2 forces was the Tear of Extinction, which is the opposite of the Life Force, and then the Void Wind, which is the opposite of the Sphere of Gods. The Void Wind can destroy magic and kill gods, and so can the Tear of Extinction. It is basically the Death Force. In the next book, you have Martian Manhunter and Hawkgirl. They go on this journey to Thanagar with John Stewart to unlock or find out a little bit more information. There they unlock the Black Apple, which winds up with Brainiac, and it's the opposite to the collective unconscious. It represents the dark knowledge of the multiverse. In the next book, the 6th dimension, they unlock the 6th note, which is the opposite of the dimensional superstructure. It gets really crazy in the 6th dimension. It involves Mixtus-Pitalik, and it gets pretty freaking crazy. That leads us to the Justice Doom War, in which Luthor now becomes the apex predator, which is like a hybrid of Martian and human DNA. It's crazy, right? And he causes the people to choose the side of doom over justice, which basically is faithfulness versus faithlessness. Faithlessness is the 7th dark energy, and when he unlocks it, it brings about Perpetua. But while all this is happening, the Batman Who Laughs is doing his thing. You know what I'm saying? So the Batman Who Laughs is doing his thing, and in this mini-series that Scott Snyder did with Jock, what happens is that we find out that he's trying to infect people, and he infects Commissioner Gordon. That runs into Batman, Superman, who are the Secret Six, and in this one, he now infects certain heroes. Gordon, for instance, is one of the Secret Six, Donna Troy, Shazam, Hawkman, Supergirl, and Blue Beetle. Those are not necessarily to death metal, but they are kind of helpful to see how the Batman Who Laughs plays into what's going on and what he's been up to since Metal. So going back to Justice Doom War, this is where Luthor resurrects Perpetua. Luthor now, with these forces, has awakened Perpetua. So who is she? Well, Perpetua is the creator of the multiverse. She's the mother of the Monitor, the Anti-Monitor, and the World Forger. Like cosmic concepts. So she is the creator of the DC multiverse. Now, she has siblings, basically. And so what happens is that people, cosmic concepts like Perpetua, create multiverses, and then they die leaking their energy in, and they create them out of this positive energy. The opposites, like instead of the still force, they use the speed force, the law of motion in the universe, right? She wanted to do something different. She didn't want to die. She wanted to live forever. So instead of infusing positive energy and giving her own life to bring about her multiverse that she birthed, she actually does it with the dark forces and creates something that will be a perpetual state of doom and destruction and amass an army with Martian and human hybrids. That's like her ideal army for some reason, and fend off the judges of the universe. There are these cosmic judges that she wants to build an army for, and then she's going to suck all the energy off from their multiverses and basically rule the multiverse supreme with the help of her 3 children. That is who Perpetua is. So at the end of that Justice League run, the Justice League lose. The universe chooses Doom. Perpetua rises. She starts destroying multiverses. Seriously, just destroying straight through them. So the Justice League get a last bit of hope from the Quintessence. That's like Phantom Stranger, Hera, Highfather, a bunch of cosmic beings. They infuse them, apparently, we find out in Death Metal #1, with Dr. Manhattan energy, but then something crazy happens. But in Hell Arisen, this happens after the Justice League falls. And what this story is it's Luthor versus the Batman Who Laughs, the final showdown for the villain of the year. And basically what happens in this story is Luthor keeps getting questioned, because Luthor goes from a self-made man to someone who is a fanatical worshiper of this crazy cosmic goddess, Perpetua, right? And he's questioning his own motivations in here. And of course, the Batman Who Laughs has an ultimate plan. He's sneaky. Luthor escapes, but he convinces Perpetua to take him on as her scion and her right-hand man, because he has secrets from the dark multiverse, secrets she needs to defeat her brethren and sisterhood in the cosmic concept, outer multiverse, whatever. These cosmic judges, they will be coming. They'll make an appearance. So that's what happens in this book. It also has the first appearance of Punchline, I believe. That leads right into Death Metal. Now, a lot of stuff has happened in between. We don't quite know how we got here. We're definitely going to be learning in the pages of Death Metal. #1 was pretty solid, and issue #2 comes out this week. Now, not necessary, but the other things that they're going to be touching on, of course, is Doomsday Clock. They mentioned Dr. Manhattan using the connective energy. They describe it as connective energy versus crisis energy. And so what they're going to do is Dr. Manhattan's powers are based on this connective energy. And in the book Flash Forward, Wally West was infused with the Dr. Manhattan powers, and I'm sure that's going to come into play since we saw him especially in the first issue. In fact, he's the one giving us all the exposition in the first issue of Death Metal. How did he get the Dr. Manhattan powers? He did it by sitting on the Mobius chair, which last we saw the Mobius chair, Owlman was on it, and Owlman was killed by Dr. Manhattan, leaving residual energy behind. And of course, he shows back up in Death Metal. But of course, it all starts with Metal. But that's what I think of the journey to Death Metal and what books you want to read if you want to read what happened before. There you go. Did that explain enough? Any more questions? Anything like that? Yeah, Greg Capullo's artwork is absolutely fantastic. Not Near Mint says 40-some issues of Justice League, and all of a sudden Orlando's writing it. There's no end. Where's the end? Metal 2. That's right. There is no end. That's something that is, if you're just reading Justice League, it ends and it's like to be continued in death metal. But you do need to read Hell Arisen, I think, if you're following along. Because then all of a sudden, that's why you know the Batman Who Laughs now is rising with Perpetua and not Luthor. But that means Luthor's going to be maybe key. He's going to be featured in the Josh Williamson penned Justice League tie-in. So during the death metal run, starting I think with issue 50, I think 52, 53, something like that. He's doing the story Doom Metal, which is Luthor, who also, by the way, had to betray his Legion to help Perpetua rise. And he becomes this crazy Apex Lex, but he's back to human now, and he escapes, and so he's definitely got some plans, right? But yeah, that was the big problem, is like now Justice League is just these like filler stories. I mean, it's kind of, that's why I haven't really been digging it too much. That was the most lucid explanation for one of the most bizarre Justice League stories. Oh, and there's Jarro, son of Jarro, who thinks he's Batman's new Robin. Yeah, I didn't even mention Jarro, who is like one of my new favorite characters. Jarro is so Starro was in No Justice, and he sacrifices himself to save everybody. But a piece of him survives, and Batman grows it in a jar, and it's called Jarro, and it makes this bond with Batman, and they have like this father-son bond, and he wants to be the next Robin, and it's actually adorable. Yeah, Metal Omnibus. They need to get on that. And now his son of Starro, son of Batman. Son of Batman and Starro, if you think about it, right? He calls him father, he calls him dad. It's so great. I love it. Jarro's the greatest. I hope he survived. I really do.